Welcome to the National Women's Fitness Academy podcast. We're here to talk about women's health, female hormones, body image, and all things health and fitness.
Hello, girls, and welcome back to another episode of the Women's Fitness Academy's podcast. I'm your host, Siggy, one of the WFA's educators and a body image and mindset coach. As we're ending March, I wanted to bring on another guest to talk about women's health, and what a better way to finish this month with a guest who we had previously 2 years ago. Her name is Natasha, and Natasha is a women's health naturopath that specializes in fertility, and she has supported over hundreds of women to regulate their cycle. And what a better way to have this conversation with Tash, because she is your expert around this field. And I want us to open this conversation around endometriosis because it is March Awareness Month for it, which is a condition that can significantly impact fertility. And for those who do have it or know someone, I would highly suggest that tuning in and listening to what we're going to be chatting today. Tash, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel like it was only yesterday we were doing our first podcast for the Academy.
I know, right? And it was such a fun podcast as well. For those who haven't listened to the first potty that I did with Tash, make sure that you go back and look for it because it was a really good conversation.
It was a very good one. I'm super excited to be chatting about endo today because it affects so many women, and I see it so often. It's becoming more diagnosed, I guess we could say. So it's definitely a good conversation to have so women can have more awareness if potentially it's affecting them as well.
Cool. Let's go dive straight into it. For those who are suffering with endo right now, or they have, maybe they're coaches and are working with clients who have endo, how do you personally approach the management of endometriosis from a coaching, but also a naturopathic perspective? And what are like some key lifestyle modifications, or even natural remedies that have shown to alleviate these symptoms that women are experiencing?
Yeah, great question. There's so much you can do naturally for endometriosis. And that's such an important thing to note, that there's lots you can do through nutrition, lifestyle, stress management, and then after that, potentially considering supplementation, herbals, things like that as well. So when we're looking at endometriosis, one of the big key factors here is immune dysfunction. So a big part here is making sure that we're regulating the immune system. And the immune system itself, what it's usually doing is causing inflammation. Yeah, that's a natural process of the immune system. So number one, if you're looking at endometriosis, is reducing inflammation. Yeah. And I remember when I started my studies and we were learning about inflammation, and you hear on the internet, everyone's throwing around inflammation. Okay, what do I do? Right. And I was always so confused about inflammation. And I was like, how do we reduce it? What do we do? So big thing here for endo is trying to reduce it as much as we can. And we can do this through nutrition, hydration, sleep, all these types of foundational lifestyle things. So I always start with the least invasive things possible. Yeah. And this goes for any condition, any health issue. Start with the basics first. And, first things first is sleep. Yeah. Always making sure you're getting that sort of 8 to 9 hours sleep. And as women, we do need more sleep than men. It's a proven fact. So we're allowed to sleep in a little bit longer than our partners. Okay. This is your permission piece, is I would always allow for at least sort of 8 to 9 hours sleep a night. So if that means going to bed earlier, go to bed earlier. Yeah. Even if you've got an early shift in the morning for work or whatever it may be, go to bed earlier if you can, and just get into that routine. So number one is sleep, and making sure that you're getting good quality of sleep. So whether that's, regulating your environments for sleep, like, making sure that the temperature in your room's at a nice temperature, or, making sure that you're listening to maybe a sleep hypnosis or meditation or whatever it may be that helps you sleep and rest, or avoiding blue light or TV or stimulating things like 1 hour prior to bed, or at least 30 minutes. Yeah, 30 minutes is probably more realistic for most people. So number one is definitely sleep. I would always start there. Then secondarily, hydration. So a big thing when we're looking at hydration is making sure that the nutrients, the food that we're eating is actually going inside the cells. So when we're really hydrated, and hydration doesn't just mean drinking water. Yeah, the reason that we drink water is for the electrolytes out of the water. You've got your sodium, your potassium, your magnesium, your calcium. So really important that you potentially consider adding some electrolytes to your water, or alternatively adding some Celtic salt and some fresh lemon or lime, for example, can also sort of mimic that, or some coconut water and adding some salt to that, for example. So having some hydration first thing in the morning upon waking, because when we're looking at your electrolytes, they sort of work like a bit of an escalator. So the way that I look at electrolytes is they're like an escalator. So they will help transport your nutrients inside the cells. So this is really important. And it's also super important if you are considering supplementation that you're super hydrated, to make sure that these good quality supplements that you're investing money in are actually going inside the cells and doing what they're supposed to do. So secondarily is hydration. So make sure you're super hydrated as well. That's also going to help with reducing inflammation. And then thirdly is definitely stress. And I know a lot of people harp on about stress all the time. And stress is not only mental, emotional stress. A lot of the time when we talk about stress, a lot of women or people in general usually think about, oh, I'm not stressed out. You know, work's not stressful. My relationship's good. I don't feel stressed. But a lot of the time when you say that, they're like they're still stressed, which is the beautiful thing, because stress is not only just that mental, emotional, it's also physical stress. It's also inflammation in the body. It's also lack of hydration or poor sleep, for example. So it's not only mental, emotional stress, but it's also the physical stress that you may or may not see in the body. And this is the challenging thing to conceptualize for a lot of people is, I feel fine, I feel happy, I feel okay, like nothing's really bad. However, that might not be what's going on inside your body per se. So this is why having these sort of conversations to bring the awareness around certain things can really help you to conceptualize what's happening inside the body, or what your body's telling you as well. Yeah. So making sure that you're taking time out to rest and recover. And that means taking time off, you know, turning your phone off, having a blackout day. I remember I'm a very type A person, and I had to learn how to stop being a type A for at least one day a week. And I find a lot of my clients also suffer with being a type A person, go, 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 doing all the things, especially the women on here that are parents and they've got children and running businesses, working, being an amazing partner, doing all the things, even if you're a dog mom or a cat mom, is making sure that you do take time out to do nothing. And if you're listening to this and you're someone that struggles to do nothing, then you're exactly the person that should be learning how to do this. It's a skill to learn to slow down and actually unwind and let your nervous system relax. And it will feel unfamiliar if you haven't done it for a long time. It's like when you go on holiday and then you get sick just after it. It's because you've been go, 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 go this whole time, and you haven't let your body slow down, rest, and recover. So big thing there is taking, you know, a Sunday. I started with a blackout Sunday, and that's what I used to call it, blackout Sunday. And I used to turn my phone off. I wouldn't do any work, and I would just do whatever I wanted, you know, and I would just allow myself to intuitively be like, okay, intuitively feel into what do I actually want to do today? Do I want to just go for a walk? Oh, how spontaneous and fun is that? Rather than having a rigid and structured routine for that day, I just allowed myself to do whatever. And if that's having a sleep, then I'd have a sleep. If that meant going and laying out in the sun, that's what I would do. But I would make sure that it was really low stimulation activities that didn't take a lot of brain power and that just came quite naturally. So it might not be a full day for you. It might only be a few hours, you know, or it might be a couple of hours. I know at busy times during my life, and life gets crazy, is I would just go to the infrared sauna for 45 minutes. And that was my thing. I go there and my nervous system decompresses and I relax and I feel really happy. Libido goes through the roof. I'm like, this is awesome. So that was my thing, is going to the infrared sauna if I was a bit more time poor. Or it might just be having a bath, or it might be doing a meditation if that's your vibe, or it might just be going to bed earlier. So stress management is a massive one, because your nervous system governs everything else that happens in the body. So if you're not managing your stress effectively, or you're not taking that time out for yourself, then you're going to cause more inflammation in the body and make your endometriosis symptoms worse. And I see this very often with clients if maybe they've had a really busy month, or maybe if they've been traveling, or maybe if they've had some issues in their relationships, or whatever it may be, maybe some personal issues, whatever it may be, is they usually notice that their endo symptoms might be a bit worse for that month or the following month. So it just shows how your stress can impact inflammation levels in the body, because your body's prioritizing that fight or flight, that survival mechanism, rather than prioritizing reducing the inflammation of the endometrial growth itself. So big thing there is stress. And I want to make sure that I say this as well, is even if you feel fine, use your blackout days or your blackout hour as a preventative strategy, because preventative healthcare is the best healthcare in comparison to sick care. Yeah, we don't want to wait until you're absolutely burnt out or you're at like 5% in the tank to then go to the infrared sauna, or to then go and take a freaking bath, or to then go and see the psychologist or a mindset coach like Siggy or someone, or reach out to your coach or your practitioner that you're working with. So this is a preventative thing. So even if you're feeling amazing, you still have to and must take that blackout time for yourself every week. So if you're listening to this podcast, I mean, you get your phone out now and put it in your calendar. I do this to my clients as well. They love me for it. After a few weeks, put it in your calendar, whether it's just an hour a week. If you're someone that's so busy, at least do an hour a week and start there. And then you work your way up. Yeah. And to have like a full day off, or it might be half a day, whatever it looks like for you and your lifestyle. Everyone's schedules are different. I know all my ladies watching this with kids, I know you're probably thinking, oh my God, how am I going to do this? But it's just finding that 1 hour or half an hour, or 5 hours if you're lucky, that works to take time for you specifically, whatever that looks like. And it's got to be something low stimulation. Yeah, not working out, not going for a run. It might be a nature walk or something that really relaxes your nervous system. And everyone's a little bit different to, what they choose. I love my infrared saunas. Other clients like baths. Other clients like taking naps. Other clients like baking. It really depends whatever's best for you and makes you feel really calm and relaxed. Yeah. So number 3 is definitely stress management. That is probably the biggest one out of anything, is going to give you the biggest bang for your buck. And it just takes a little bit of self-discipline and making sure that you're doing it recurringly as well. So yeah, we've got sleep. Yeah.
I know. I was going to say you made such a good point about the stress side of thing, because too often people don't realize how stressed they are till they have those certain symptoms. And I actually had a conversation with a client not long ago, and she's like, I feel fine, but I have all these cold sores coming up. And I'm like, you're not fine. That is a sign of your body that it is reaching a certain point where it's stress, and we're going to have to either change your training capacity, or add, as you mentioned, like a blackout time for yourself, or a full day of just rest. And I can so relate to the type A worker, because we're always on the go. We're always reaching out to clients. We're always wanting to hit these certain goals. And then when you're having a chat with a girlfriend, and you're like, everything's fine, but I feel really tired. I think I'm about to like burn out or have like some form of like meant to be. And then you're like reflecting back going, okay, I need to just chill out. Otherwise, it's just going to get worse. And like you said, with endo, the inflammation just rises way too much, to a point where, you start having consistent pains where usually you're not so, you shouldn't be getting these symptoms as hard as you are.
Yeah, 100%. And I see it so often. And I even notice it within myself, within my cycle. If I've pushed so hard during the month with my training, with work, with my relationships, with celebrating, with all the things, usually come my luteal phase just before my period, I'm usually pretty exhausted. Yeah. And that's, that doesn't mean that you can't push and you can't be ambitious or anything like that. I love all of those things. However, it's knowing when to slow down or when to pull back. And this is a big conversation I have with my girls every week, is most of us know how to push. We know how to get shit done. We're women. And we know how to just be ambitious and driven and get the shit done. Yeah. However, a lot of us don't know how to pull back or when to slow down because a lot of us feel guilty or shit, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. However, you'll notice once you actually allow yourself permission to slow down a little bit, and it doesn't mean every day is going to be slow, but it just means, there's going to be moments of slowness, moments of slowing down. You're actually going to be way more productive. Your health is going to be a lot better. And also, especially for endo as well, your inflammation is going to be down a lot more as well. Because if we're looking at endometriosis with inflammation, for example, it's like a big fire, essentially. And then if we're stressed out, overworked, you're not sleeping well, it's just that cascade effect. And we're throwing, more flames at the fire and just making things a little bit worse. And I want to make sure that the women listening as well realize that stress is inevitable. Yeah, we're never going to get rid of stress at all. There's always going to be new challenges, new experiences, more responsibilities the older we get as well. And the thing is, it's not about trying to reduce the stress itself, but it's about building your stress resilience more, because the truth is stress is always going to be there. Fortunately for us, it makes us grow as individuals, but it's building our stress resilience. And building your stress resilience, especially for endo, is doing these lifestyle things to build your strength to be able to move through stress regardless and not fall to, a pile of bricks towards the end of the month, or when your period comes, or when your period pain starts up, and then being bedridden and all the things that come with that. So building your stress resilience is key to overall health as well.
I completely agree with that, because too often, I don't know about yourself, but I'm seeing these trends where people are like, manage your stress, but making sure that you'll never get stressed. And it's just like, well, it doesn't work that way. Because if we all lived a stress-free life, nothing would be building. We wouldn't, as you mentioned, like we wouldn't build the resilience or the strength around these things. So it's always good to have reflections. And I do this with my clients. I'm like, when you notice yourself feeling stress, is the stress level at 10, or has it reduced because now you're able to be stronger in that situation? For example, if you're in the car, stuck in traffic, and someone pulls in front of you, instead of like shouting and screaming and yelling at them, you're just like, oh, cool, yeah, whatever. Like you just continue on with your day. And I think that is a way of building that resilience around stress management, not letting every little thing of your day piss you off.
Yeah, 100%. And that's definitely building that emotional stress resilience. And then also the physical stress resilience is some of the things that we've been speaking about: taking time off, relaxing, sleep, hydration. These things are going to be helping on a physical level to build your resilience. Because if you've slept really well, you've been fed really well, you're super hydrated, maybe you've done a little bit of a workout, or you've been for a walk, or you've taken time for you in the morning before just going straight to work, and then something happens at work, for example, your stress resilience is probably going to be a bit higher. Yeah. So, exactly like what you're saying, Sig, is building that one emotional stress resilience, but also the physical stress resilience as well, and combination of both, and you'll be unstoppable.
100%. And that helps with alleviating symptoms of endo, as you said, like it's perspective of how you're managing your stress, but also being able to manage your endo through stressful times, inflammation, lifestyle modifications which has a tendency to positively improve what's happening. And I want us to look at fertility outcomes as well, because we know there's a lot of research out there now with the correlation of endo and fertility, but also fertility in general. How lately I'm noticing this pattern that a lot of people are struggling with fertility and can be quite emotionally and physical taxing to the individual and also couples. And I would love to know, like, what's your approach around supporting your clients or women who are navigating these fertility challenges?
Fertility and endometriosis is so very individualized, because it really depends on where the growth of the tissue is, the distortion of the pelvis, if there's where the adhesions are, the scarring of fallopian tubes, the inflammation of pelvis, the immune function, the hormonal cascade, the ability of implantation, if that's occurring, if it's not occurring, the quality of the eggs as well. So there's so many factors that can positively or less positively impact fertility for someone with endometriosis. Does it mean that you can't get pregnant with endometriosis? Absolutely not. There's so many women that have, however, there potentially can be complications due to these, multiple factors occurring. So it really depends in that regard. Always the gold standard for endometriosis is having a laparoscopy to see where the adhesions are and if potentially they can be removed and things like this. And it can also indicate, the level of damage and things like that as well. Because if there is, adhesions or any problems blocking the fallopian tubes, for example, then that's going to be a bit of a red flag for someone with endo. So it's really finding out the more specifics if you are someone that's potentially wanting to conceive, to consider potentially a laparoscopy to see the level of endometriosis, what stage it's at, where it's growing, and that sort of thing will then also help further natural treatment thereafter as well.
It's so interesting to have this conversation because too often people don't realize that there is the complications around it. But as you mentioned, it's not always just that case. And from a holistic health perspective and in terms of like the emotional well-being, what have you found that has been quite helpful for them?
Mm. So definitely some of the things that we've already mentioned, all your lifestyle things, definitely lots with nutrition. A big thing with endometriosis when we're looking at inflammation is, yes, there is that immune dysfunction, and we're also wondering where else is there immune dysfunction. Typically, there's lots of digestive issues as well, co-infections like small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, candida. It's very common to have these infections at the same time, which then exacerbate endometriosis symptoms. So that supporting that, getting rid of that, rebalancing gut bacteria, vaginal microbiome as well, can also be really supportive of endometriosis to reduce the total inflammation overall, because anything to do with digestive health is going to impact your hormonal health as well and the immune system itself. You've got about 70% of your immune system in your gut. And if you've got something like SIBO or any sort of bacterial overgrowth in the gut, then addressing that can be really supportive for endometriosis clients. So typically a lot of my endo clients is we'll usually do some sort of gut testing to see if there's any other issues there. Very, very commonly, I would say almost 10 out of 10 of my endo clients will have some sort of gut dysbiosis because of that immune dysfunction. It's just causing that disruption there, and potentially also investigating your vaginal microbiome as well to see what's happening there, because very commonly with imbalance of your bacterial makeup in the vagina can also impact fertility as well. So assessing both of those bacteria makeup is really important, and then also doing some things that are supportive of improving egg quality, because it's not about how many eggs you have, it's actually more important about the quality of the eggs themselves. So a lot of women get really, really freaked out when they see, low AMH if they've got endometriosis. So AMH is anti-Mullerian hormone, and a lot of women have this tested and freak out when it's really, really low. However, it's not the best test to assess your fertility, as it absolutely can be low, but it doesn't mean that you're unable to fall pregnant at all. So I would be looking more at the quality of the eggs themselves and how we can support improving the quality of the eggs, and allowing at least for like 6 to 12 month period to get you into the best shape possible, and improving that quality of the egg over that period of time before then trying to conceive. That's the most ideal time frame, because that's the whole length. 12 months is that whole length of folliculogenesis to for egg quality. So it's really important that we allow enough time to, one, treat any other co-infections, whether it's gut issues, your vaginal microbiome, reduce inflammation, reduce that fire, and then also support all the foundational things to improve your egg quality overall, and make sure ovulation's happening every month, and also just to improve quality of life Yeah, because very important as a woman that has endometriosis is to improve the quality of life, making sure, you're not in severe pain every month, making sure ovulation's happening, reducing PMS symptoms and things like this is very important for your overall quality of life before then, trying to conceive. Because when you're pregnant or even trying to conceive, like you said, Sig, it can be a challenging process. It does bring all the colors of the rainbow during fertility. So it's very important to build yourself up where you have that emotional and physical capacity to then take on more. So exactly sort of what we're talking about when it comes to stress is making sure we're building that emotional and mental and physical capacity to take on more, potentially with the colors of the rainbow that come with the fertility journey, whether you have endo or not, because it can be very colorful. There can be lots of different things that come about during fertility. So it's being aware that these things potentially can happen and knowing that you're doing everything that you can and working with someone that can help support you along the way is really important as well.
I literally just learned something new around the egg count and the quality because, as you said, like too often
Yeah.
people and professionals will tell you it's all about how many eggs you have and then you have to freeze it. And I think that's a conversation for another time because that whole process is quite stressful on the woman and most of the time it doesn't even work. But don't take it from me. You'll have to speak to professionals regarding that. But also regarding the vaginal microbiome, the gut microbiome, like I already knew that, but I know for our listeners, if you're someone who has endo and you're having gut issues, that's kind of like a red flag or orange flag, depending on what the situation is to get some testing, as you said, so you have a better understanding of how to be able to alleviate these symptoms and live better and healthier.
Yeah, 100%. Because, for example, if when we're looking at endometriosis, they say it's estrogen dominant, estrogen dominant. And what can happen, for example, if you're constipated, it means that estrogen is going to be recirculating in the body over the month if you're constipated because it's not coming out through the feces. So this is why it's really important to look at the body holistically and not just look at endometriosis as a reproductive condition, because it's not. It's an immune dysfunction that's affecting multiple body systems, not just your reproductive organs. So that's why it's, like I mentioned, potentially considering a laparoscopy, working with your gynecologist if that's necessary or not for you specifically, and assessing where the adhesions are, if they're on the bowel, if they're just in the reproductive organs, or if they've traveled elsewhere in the body, can be really beneficial. But from a more holistic standpoint, is definitely looking at the gut, the vaginal microbiome, and reducing the inflammation, and then obviously improving the quality of the eggs as well, because that's the most important piece. And like what you mentioned about AMH, for example, is someone with PCOS, for example, can have really high AMH. So they might be looking at their AMH and thinking, oh my God, this is amazing. I've got a really high AMH, but still not be able to fall pregnant. So that just gives you an indication of why it's not the best test for fertility outcomes. It's more of just it's more of just a test that GPs like to do. It's not my favorite.
Yeah, I feel as if it's not everyone's favorite test these days, but this is why I've brought you on here. So for anyone who is in the midst of, the endo process journey, I don't know why I said process, in the endo journey and then needing to alleviate some symptoms, go see Tash. She'll be your girl to help you. But Tash, before we head off, one misconception that people need to know about when it comes to endo and fertility?
Oh, that's a great question. The biggest misconception around endo and fertility. Oh, this is a good one. I'm not sure if it's a good one, but there's a misconception around endometriosis that if you fall pregnant and have a baby, that miraculously your endometriosis will be gone thereafter. Unfortunately, that's not the case, as it can absolutely alleviate it for a period of time. However, it is very common for it to come back and grow back, I guess we could say, after having children as well. So if you've been told one of these myths around, if you have children, after that you'll be fine, It's not always the case. If it has been the case for you, fantastic. You're probably a unicorn. However, it's not usually the case after childbirth.
Well, there you go, girls. Breaking those misconceptions, but also giving you some tips around how to alleviate your symptoms throughout endo. Tash, thank you so much for joining me today.
You're so welcome.
Girls, if you enjoyed today's podcast, please make sure that you screenshot, tag us at the Women's Fitness Academy. And then till next time, I hope you build more of a resilient mindset around your stress.